The match has finished. West Ham United 0, Chelsea 3. Humbling, an absolute humbling. It could have been worse. I mean, you could make a case that quite possibly that could have been 5-1 or something like that. It's a game of two halves. West Ham were crap and attacked a little bit in the first half, and were crap in the second half. And that was pretty poor stuff. It has to be said. Time and time again, we saw the same mistakes being made throughout the game. There was a real weakness to West Ham's defence, and it was exploited by a very, very quick Chelsea team who just knew where those weak points were and kept on going for them. It was basically down at our right-hand side. They were constantly attacking the area where perhaps Wan-Bissaka could have been, perhaps even Konstantinos Mavropanos should have been, and what you found on numerous occasions where Edson Alvarez actually was. Quite frankly, we were just not quick enough, not switched on enough, and not tactically or technically good enough to deal with this Chelsea team, who were a counter-attacking team, and they were very, very efficient at doing exactly that. The way they carved us apart was, well, it was embarrassing. You're going to watch the goals yourselves at some point today, and you'll see exactly what I mean here. But too many times West Ham vacated the space in that sort of right defensive position, and Chelsea exploited it. In fact, you know, you could argue all three of their goals sort of came from that area, although the second one was certainly a lot more central, but it did involve the players that I've already mentioned. There was a point certainly during the first half I looked at it and I thought, actually, probably 4 of the 5 quickest players on the pitch were all Chelsea players. We were slow, dog slow, really, really bad. It was so slow, and there was one. I don't want to put all the blame on Guido Rodriguez, because that would certainly be unfair. But what he did was he epitomised quite how slow West Ham were, and he got hooked after, I think it was about 35 minutes, got hooked with Thomas Souček. Let me try and say a couple of positives, because otherwise it's just going to sound like an absolutely negative video. But we've just lost 3-0. It's hard to put a positive spin on that, and there were boos today. And the boos were, well, there was some muted boos at the final whistle, but come the final whistle, there weren't an awful lot of fans left in there, has to be said. The biggest round of boos came when, I almost called him David Moyes, Freudian slip there, when Lopetegui substituted Crescencio Somerville. That was not met well at all, not well received. Very, very loud booing for that substitution. You sort of understood why he made the Souček one something, perhaps, you know, a different personnel ordinarily might have been changed, but actually Souček did all right, and certainly I think, you know, posed something of he put a bit of snap, he put a bit of bite into West Ham's tackling, and did he alleviate the pace issues? No, he didn't, but I can understand him, and fair play to Lopetegui for making a decision after 35 minutes. It's certainly not something we're used to seeing. The positives I was speaking about, well, Somerville was one of them, and that's why there were boos at the end when, well, at the point of the substitution when he was taken off. He looked to be West Ham's most exciting player, and certainly we've spoken about it a few times on this channel. I was looking for a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of something down that left-hand side. I thought we had it. I thought he played reasonably well, and Emerson played well. Well, do you know what they did? Actually, it's not a case of, I don't want to damn them with faint praise. We were okay down that left-hand side. We had a little bit of something there. That the right side was a complete and utter abomination, though. Somerville was skillful, he was tricky, he was aware, he was alert. He was one of the few players in the West Ham team that looked sharp and had a little bit of pace in there. Should have won a penalty, and I think he was. This sign came up on the VAR. I don't think he was being tugged for long enough, quite frankly. So I think, yeah, for that reason, it wasn't given as a penalty. I'm not sure how long you've got to do this tugging lark for, but it wasn't long enough. It was a penalty in my book, though, it has to be said. Not that West Ham deserved to win. I'm not going to stand here and make a case for that. Far from it. As I say, I would have felt that if that had been 5-1, I wouldn't have been stood here doing this video complaining. I really, really wouldn't have done. I'll tell you what it was like, and it's weird, actually, because it was like Chelsea were the experienced, wily team, and they'll have a younger average age than we will. But they just knew. They waited for us to make sort of, I guess, predictable errors, and they absolutely capitalised on them. The other bright spark, and listen, maybe you'll think there's more than this if you watch the game back. Maybe you'll see some things on TV that I didn't see today. I thought the other bright spark was Mohamed Kudus on the right-hand side. It worked. He was much more of a threat. Got a good shot on goal. Actually had a disallowed goal actually for offside. It was offside, no complaints there at all. But I just felt for the first time this season West Ham had a little bit of balance with the left and the right. And as I say, in that first half we did pose Chelsea some threat. There were points where we were attacking okay. That's about as good as I can get in terms of a compliment. It was just a defensive shambles, and it seemed like we were 2-0 down the first half very, very early on. I mean, the first goal was a sort of bit of an inch, basically got caught out of position. It was Alvarez ended up chasing back, Mavropanos was out of position. Goodness knows where Aaron Wan-Bissaka was. Nicholas Jackson just too quick, absolutely too quick. Ended up with the wrong players chasing him down. He scored a goal. It was. Do you know what? I'm sure Chelsea will look and think it was a good goal because they exploited the things that West Ham were bad at, but West Ham will be looking at that and thinking that was not a good goal to concede. That's certainly not the case. I think the second goal was a real sucker punch actually, because there was like an exchange of passes. Cucurella had moved a little bit in field. There was a bit of a passing exchange, and then someone played a really, really good ball through the middle. I think the problem was not that the ball was good. There was no other central defender there. I think it basically left Alvarez was the first marker with Jackson, and then left a foot race, which I think was between possibly the end of it would have been Jackson and Kilman at some point. But make no mistake about it, that whole right-hand side of the defence had gone missing. I don't know where it was. Obviously, I'd need to see a replay of it. But where was Wan-Bissaka? Where was Mavropanos? It was a sort of bit of a gut-wrenching goal to concede actually. And by the time they scored the third goal, and they scored the third goal just after half-time, and just absolutely killed the game. Again, it was a counter-attack. It was a fast counter-attack. I think it might have been Palmer. They certainly ended up with a 2-on-1. They scored. By that point, it was already game over, because Chelsea did not need to change tactics at any point during that game, even if they had decided to or wanted to. They could just carry on playing counter-attack all game long. Mavropanos, well, you know what? He's going to be one of the fall guys from this. I've no doubt about that at all. But I will tell you something. I do think this is tactical rather than just his fault. Too many times he's clearly been instructed to go and win the ball in the opposition half. We play a very, very high line now, and I just don't think the personnel are equipped, I think, to deal with it from the other side, basically. And I think. What Tadibo must be thinking, I don't know at the moment. Tadibo must be thinking what we've got to do to get into this team when it's really that bad. Clearly there was instruction to push forward. Clearly there was an instruction to keep a high line. None of it worked. It left us susceptible and vulnerable to attack. Was really, really poor. Rodriguez, as I mentioned, got hooked. Alvarez had some good points, but we're slow. We are a slow team, and it was very, very. I thought it was very evident in that game, but then again I thought it was evident and spoke about it before the Fulham game, because they have some quick players as well. I don't really know what the plan is here. I think we're still looking for this plan. Yes, it's a high line, and yes, we're pressing a little bit more, but we've lost our first 3 games at home now, and that's not great. We've got to start winning these games. This stuff is really, really important for us, and I think at the moment we're really trying to implement a style of play. Well, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave it now, because I mean, there's people looking at me funny and as if to say, you need to get out of the stadium, we want to lock up, which is fair enough. There's going to be inquests. There really are. There's going to be people looking at the manager. There's going to be looking at some of the recent signings. I've got to go because I've got a lot. I've got about 5 luminous jackets descending on me, mate. I'm going to go. Thank you very much indeed. I'll catch you a lot later.